Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim, and we are continuing on Masechet Succah. We are on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Bet, in the middle of the Amud, starting the new Mishnah. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zechut Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have full recovery Refuah Shelema, for Michael Ben Nahid, should have Refuah Shelema, for Avraham Jamshid Ben Tajgol, that should have Refuah Shelema, for growing in our community, Baruch Esther Bat Chaya, that should have full recovery Refuah Shelema. In the zechut of this amazing day of Purim, Bezat Hashem, Amen. These months' learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shea family, by Dayan family, by Kohen families. It should be an ultimate zechut for all their mishpachot. Amen. Okay, the Mishnah is going to discuss, now that we have seen the halachot of Arba Minim, now how do you actually take them? How's the mitzvah of Nanuim? Now, we haven't really spoken about the mitzvah of Nanuim, and the Mishnah just jumps right into it. Where in the tefillah would you do the nanuim, the shaking, the shackling of lulav? Where would it be? So says the Mishnah, Behodu Lashem Tchila Vasof. The psukim that start Hodu Lashem Kitov Kilo Olam Chasto. Again, the psukim of Halel are consecutive psukim in Tehillim from Kuf Yud Gimal until Kuf Yud Chet, being a long one, and Hodu Lashem Kitov, start that psukim starting Hodu Lashem Kitov. You will start with the Hodu being the Nanuim, and you would go at the end also. You would do Nanuim, Ube Ana Hashem Hoshiana, and you would also do it in Ana Hashem Hoshiana. This is Divrei Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai Omrim Af Be Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. You would do it also in Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. So that's Machlokes Bet Hillel Bet Shammai, whether or not you would have it by Ana Hashem Hatzlichana as well. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Now remember, Rabbi Akiva is a newcomer, relatively speaking. He was student of Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, Rabbi Yoshua. The Nasi was Rabban Gamliel. So it says, I was watching the Nasi and one of the Gdolei Talmidei Chachamim. By the way, it seems like Rabbi Yoshua would be the natural next to Rabban Gamliel, because the Gemara in Masechet Brachot that we had in Daf Kaf Chet, when they wanted to force resign and give early retirement to Rabban Gamliel because of the story that happened with Rabbi Yoshua, actually, right? Because he had embarrassed Rabbi Yoshua publicly more than once. They say, well, so who should we put up? And the first option is Rabbi Yoshua. So, well, we can't really do Rabbi Yoshua because he's the Baal Maaseh. It will be too much. But that's the first name that comes up. And the reason that Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus was not mentioned even there over there, because that's perhaps after the story of Tanur Shel Achnai, mentioned in Masechet Bava Metzia, Daf Nun Chet, and Nun Tet, really. We multiple times have discussed the story of Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol and how he was put in Shamta. He was basically excommunicated because he didn't accept the ruling of the majority of the Bedin, and hence, even though that the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says that out of the 5 Talmidim, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenus perhaps was the greatest of all, he was not mentioned because, again, that was put aside in that. So these are the 2 top ones. Rabbi Akiva says, I am watching Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua. These are the 2 top. So Fe'aiti b'Rabban Gamliel Rabbi Yoshua. Shkol ha'am hayu b'nanein et lulav. And the entire layman people were doing nanuim on Ana Hashem Hoshiana and on Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, but these 2 quietly were not. They only did it in Ana Hashem Hoshiana. So amazing. A little story over here about how the Nanuim worked in the time of Rabbi Akiva. But the Gemara asks the obvious question. It says, well, you didn't introduce to me even the concept of Nanuim. You just jumped right into it. You have to first introduce, if you want to tell me where you do Nanuim, you have to first tell me that I do Nanuim altogether. Where did you introduce to me that I do Nanuim to begin with? Says the Gemara, Ninua Mandach Hashemeh. Who mentioned the name of Nanuim even? Right? The Mandach Hashemeh comes from here. So who mentioned it even? That you start telling me the halachot of Nanuim, you have to first tell me that I do Nanuim. So says the Gemara, Hatam Kai. This actually comes from the Mishnah that we had earlier on, in the beginning of the parak, in Daf Kaftet Amud Bet, the Mishnah that discussed the size of the lulav mentioned that even though that hadas v'arava, it's 3 tfachim, the lulav has to have 3 tfachim plus a tefach for nanuim. And the language of the Mishnah was, kol lulav shesh bo 3 tfachim kedei lenanea. He has to have 3 tfachim, and on top of that, 1 more kedei lenanea. So I introduced to you the concept of ninuim. I already said that we need a longer lulav because you need to do nanuim. So you already know that we got to do it. Where do you do it? It's really picking up where the Gemara left off, the Mishnah left off in the beginning of our parak. We just had to explain to you the number of arba minim, the fact that you can have more than 4 arba minim, the fact that where you know from the Chumash that when it says pri etz hadar is etrog, and when it says anaf etz avod is hadas, and so on and so forth, and whether or not he needs lulav sarich eged, lo sarich eged. All of those we had to discuss to now get to actual mitzvah of arba minim, hechan hu menanea. But I already mentioned to you already in the first Mishnah where we started that you need nanuim. So says the Gemara, and here now he's continuing hechan minanim. Tanan hatam, we learned shte alechem. Now this is to learn how you do nanuim altogether, right? We learned shte alechem shte kivsei aseret. On Shavuot you would have the famous korban of shte alechem, the only time that you bring lechem chametz as a korban, right? All the korbanot, the flour offerings, are all or matzah. When you have the exception to the rule would be shte alechem on Shavuot, that's chametz. But there's another very special thing on Shavuot, and that is that by Shavuot you have the 2 kvasim that are brought, and this is korban shelamim basically. So only shelamim that are this way. So both of the lechem and the kvasim are exceptions to the normal rules of korbanot. Now here we are bringing this korban, and you have to do the nanuim. Here also you have to actually do tenufa, which means you have to move it around as the korbanot are still alive. Before shchita, you put the bread on the kvasim, and you lift them, and you do tenufa. So says the Mishnah. This is again a Mishnah in Masechet Menachot discussing this korban that's brought on Shavuot. Kesad hu oseh. How do you do it? Maniach shte alechem al gabei shnei kvasim. You put the shte alechem on the kvasim. Umaniach yado tachtehen. You put your hands beneath them. You lift them up. Umanif, and you do tenufa. How do you do tenufa? Umolich umevi ma'ale umorid. Right? You take it and you bring it. That means you push it away from your body. That's molich. Umevi, you bring it back close. And then ma'ale umorid, you lift it up, you bring it back down. And that is learned from the pasuk asher hunaf asher huram. Asher hunaf asher huram means the tenufa that goes sideways, and the huram, which goes up and down, is elevated and is brought back down. So says the Gemara, Shnemar, Asher unaf Asher huram, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Molich umevi, lemi she'arba ruchot shelo. So we're learning now the tenufa, so to speak, the shuckling, the shaking of the lulav from the Masechet Menachot by shte alechem and shnei kvasim. So says Rabbi Yochanan, why would you do that? Exactly. Now you have these 4 species, and you're saying Halil, you're saying the Tefillah. Technically speaking, when you hold the Arba Minim, you're Yotze, technically speaking, already. Right? This is why you'll see people holding their etrog backwards, right? Before they say the bracha. Not only, and you have to be careful because even putting it together is not a necessity. right? If you took lulav in your hand, and then you took this separately even, you already were yotze pashtut. So therefore, people are very careful. You'll find people being careful to hold. They hold it backwards in a way that you know, because it has to be derech gidulan. That's in order not to be yotze before you say the bracha, right? Unless you have kavanah, you say, I don't want to be yotze until I say bracha. That already would be a kavanah hefchit, because mitzvot tzrichot kavanah, which we're going to get into whole discussion soon. The mitzvot tzrichot kavanah, or mitzvot en tzrichot kavanah, is a shas discussion throughout shas. Whether or not you do the mitzvah, you required to also have kavanah that I'm doing this mitzvah, or you maybe don't have to have that kavanah in that way, right? We spoke about this, the Bach, that speaks about Chag Sukkot actually being one of those that, even according to those that you don't need to have kavanah for regular mitzvot, maybe here you do have to have kavanah, because it says Le'man yed'u dorotechem ki b'sukkot hoshafti et b'nei Yisrael. You remember this Bach and Tur that we discussed at length, that perhaps here the Torah is telling you, I want you to remember that you're sitting in the sukkah because I took you out of Mitzrayim. So whether you hold mitzvot tzrichot kavanah or mitzvot en tzrichot kavanah, it will be something that you have to bear in mind. But especially if mitzvot don't need to be with kavanah, then when you are holding the thing, you're already yotze without any kavanah. Unless you have an opposite kavanah. So I don't want to be yotze until I hold the thing. Now, that's holding the lulav et rogalas v'arava together. Now, what happens with this whole shuckling? Right? Where do you learn that from? Why would you do that even? So says Rabbi Yochanan, you know why you do it? For the following reason. Amar Rabbi Yochanan molech umevi. You take it sideways. Lemisha arba ruchot shelo. To show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu governs the world of arba ruchot, right? And this is more than just arba ruchot. We have explained perhaps before my thought pattern of how the number 4 works. You find this many times. There are many themes of 4. You see it even in Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in Perek Hey, that starts with the theme of 10. That goes to the theme of 7 and ends up with the theme of 4, which is the 4 elements of creation, or 4 elements of any change. Right, and that's why you find that any massive change is 4D, because it's 4 times just the elements of creation times the dimensions of 10. Right, so here you're taking it to the 4 ruchot, and it also represents the 4 elements and all of that, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created the 4 ruchot ha'olam. Says Rabbi Yochanan. Lemi sha'arba ruchot shelo. Ma'alo morid lemi sha'shamayim va'aretz shelo. The ma'alo morid, it will be for the indication of HaKadosh Baruch Hu owning, governing Shamayim va'aretz. B'ma'arav matnoachim, in Eretz Yisrael, they would learn it a little bit differently. Amar Chav Bar Ukva, Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Molech umevi kedei la'asor ruchot ra'ot. You take it molech umevi for control. Basically, it's a form of tefillah to stop bad winds. Right, hurricanes and all those that come. Gemara of Kafei discusses how destructive ruchot could be if not controlled, and therefore, we could testify to that by all the things, that natural disasters that we have seen in sides of United States in the past few years. It will be devastation. So that's the control ruchot raot, and ma'aleh umorid. The fact that you take it vertically up and down is for control of rain, and difficult. Rain could be very difficult. Like when you need rain and it doesn't come, you could have half a country burn in fires, right? Especially if you have no reservoirs. And sometimes when you're planting and you need just calm, and if it's going to start raining hard, it's going to destroy the entire agricultural system. That's also not good, right? It could cause floods and so on, as we have also seen in recent days. So therefore, this is to control the elements of rain and wind, which is something that we live with in a very real way. We have to still have a great bite of discussing what exactly is the reason that this would be controlled by lulav etrog hadas v'arava. Of course, we realize that Sukkot is the time for rain. That's why we have ushafte mayim b'sason mima'anei Yeshua. The whole concept that we had for nisuch hamayim would be on Sukkot versus all the other Yamim Tovim. But again, this is something that we have to discuss, take a deeper dive in discussion of this in a hashkafic level. But nevertheless, morid, ma'aleu morid kedei la'asor tilalim ra'im. That's the control, the negative rain and dew. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Avin, ve'it Rabbi Yossi bar Zevila. Zot omeret, this teaches you that shiare mitzvah makvin et hapuranut, that the leftovers of the mitzvah, those non-critical parts of the mitzvah, because here again, the terufa is not part of the korban, it's not ma'akiv. If you didn't do it, it's fine. It's a part of the mitzvah, but it's not a critical part of the mitzvah. And that is makvin et hapuranut. Says Rashi, on top of the top Rashi, mitzvah shirayim, a mitzvah that's a leftover. She'ena ikar, it's not the main part of the mitzvah. It's not critical. It's not ma'akiv. It's not ma'akiv the kapara. Afal piken chashuva hi la'akiv et hapuranut. It is important enough to stop the puranut. Now this is very much in line with what we say in Rashi in the beginning of Parashat Ekev, right? Ekev tishmeun. If you listen to the Ekev, now Ekev tishmeun means, of course, if you listen, that will follow, just like a heel will follow the step, and that would be the simple. But Chazal say these are the mitzvot shadam dash ba'akevav. These are the mitzvot that are so insignificant in the eyes of people that person tramples over them, right? Nobody is really. People are running after the important mitzvot. Right? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not necessarily pay attention to those the same way as we do. The mitzvot shadam dash ba'akevav sovavim oto b'shat hadin. You know, in the judgment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem looks at those small mitzvot for good and chas v'shalom, opposite, in both ways. When a person is careful in the details of a mitzvah, that those are the shields in front of puranut. If you want to understand this in a little logical, sensible way, a person that gives, a father comes home and he's thirsty, and he tells the kid, "Can bring me a cup of water," right? And the kid is doing whatever he's doing, and he rolls his eyes. Oh, kivud avayim, he has to listen. So he rolls his eyes and he gives a sigh, as if the world is coming to an end. And he gets up and he barely schleps himself to the thing, gets the first mug. That's like really coffee mug, and it says on it, "You're the best ima in the world," right? And goes to the faucet, fills it up with water, and schleps it to the father, and hands it over without eye contact. And well, he did what he was told. He did the mitzvah, quote unquote, right? And contrast that with a person that the father says it, and he jumps, he springs into action, he runs to the thing, gets the nicest, largest crystal, he washes it inside and rinses it 3 times from outside, and he goes and gets one of these smart waters that are $10 a bottle, which if you're still buying them, it has not been working, right? And he pours it in and puts a cubes of ice, he puts a plate underneath it, brings it with, he says it's hot outside, brings it with a box of napkins, and he hands it to him with you know, submission. That's also the same thing, but it's really not, because shiarei mitzvah, the details show the love. You know what protects a person? Shiarei mitzvah, because where the obligations end, relationships start. That's how it is, right? That I coined myself. Right? When the obligations end, relationships start. Or you could say it better, the relationship starts where the obligation ends. That's what it is. If you're obligated, if you have a gun to your head, how much does that mean in truth? But if you don't have to do it, that's not ma'akiv. That part is not, it's not so important. Right? But that's what matters. The 5 minutes that you come earlier to the shiur, to shacharit, when you come, you're sitting there already, you're being the first one of the asara rishonim, right? You could make your examples of how the Shiarei Mitzvah are. But Shiarei Mitzvah it is, nevertheless. Maran Chidara asks in multiple places, he says, well, the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, Kaf Aleph, Kaf Gimel, Gemara says, Haragil Baner, Have'an lo Banim Talmidei Chachamim. If you are accustomed to lighting Nerot Shabbat, Nerot Chanukah, Have'an le Banim Talmidei Chachamim. You will have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. Maran Chidara says, well, I know a lot of people who are Ragil Baner, and their children are nothing like Talmidei Chachamim, right? So what happened? Chazal, it's a guarantee for. It says it doesn't mean that. It means you're doing it with the best way possible, doing the best time of candle lighting. You have prepared yourself for the whole day that the time of candle lighting should be special, should be nice. You're already in Bigdei Shabbat. You're doing it with calmness, with a lot of kavanah. You're using the best, nicest fuel, oil, and the nicest candelabra that you could afford, and you daven with simcha. You're filled with energy and with connection. That's what it means. You think he's talking about the action? Yeah, you check the box of Hadlakat Nerot, Hazaku Baruch. Amazing. And really Hazaku Baruch. Everyone should do the motion of every mitzvah, right? To be a Shulchan Aruch Yid. But Shulchan Aruch Yid is not what we're talking about. Shiarei Mitzvah is you're doing it with love and with zest and with passion and with kavanah. That is Shiarei Mitzvah Ma'akvin et HaPur'anut. This is, by the way, this is very much aligned with being Purim today. And Purim, that's what it is. Kiyemu v'kiblu ha'Yehudim. Like the Kabbalat Torah that was done again was from absolute love in a place that you didn't even see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The name of Hashem is not mentioned in the Megillah, and they did Kiyamu v'Kiblu, Na'aseh v'Nishma, is the same exact thing. And you only accept something that you haven't seen when you are so passionately excited about it, right? This is the days of Simcha, right? Ayudim Haita, Simcha so vikar, right? Ayudim Haita Ora v'Simcha v'Sason vikar. This was not after they set it up for being Yemei Simcha. It was because they had this passion of Simcha. They reached that level, right? Orazu Torah, they realized that the Torah is the real light. There is no other light, right? Sason ze Yom Tov, Simcha ze Yom Tov. Sason it's talking on Brit Milah. They accepted Brit Milah with passion. Chazal said that's why we're doing it nowadays with passion. Yekar, the real glory, the real value is tefillin, right? That's the recognition that they came into, and therefore we are doing it with Simcha in that way. No, it's not the other way around. It's because they had this genuine recognition that there is nothing else besides connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they did it with Simcha, right? And that's a tremendous thing. Shiarei Mitzvah, Ma'akvin et HaPur'anut. That enough for this for now. So that's a whole, could be a whole rate by itself. But says the Gemara, Shaharei Tenufa Shiarei Mitzvah, because Tenufa, this whole, bringing to the sideways and up and down, it's Shiarei Mitzvah. It's not really Ma'akvin. It's not a critical part of the Mitzvah, and yet Otzeret Ruchot Utlalim Raim. It stops hurricanes and floods and so on and so forth. It's a tremendous thing. He stops Pur'anut. Rava. And Rava said, V'cher be'lulav. Same is with lulav. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, mamtila u'maitila. Rav Acha bar Yaakov would take it and do the sideway shackle and the shaking of the lulav. Amar, then gira be'ena de sitna. This should be a spear in the eye of the Satan, right? This lulav that looks like a spear should be like a spear in the eye of the Satan. The Gemara says, well, not too fast. Not that we don't recommend that you should try this at home, because as we have had this before already once in this Masechta, we don't want to necessarily discuss this. We mentioned there's multiple different Gemara in like a small rate bite. We discuss all the Gemara that talk about this Gira Beina the Satan, Gemara in the end of Masechet Kiddushin and so on and so forth, and says the Gemara, Amar din gira be'ena the Satan ve'lav miltai. It says, the Gemara says, don't take that too seriously to start trying this at home, because mishum da'ati le'igruyebe. Because if you do this, then the Satan is going to fight back if you start up with him, and therefore it's not something that we want to start up with, and hence, even though that he may have done it, it's not something that we would do. And that brings us to the next Mishnah, which was Rat Hashem we will discuss and start learning in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.